I'm trying to think. One of the examples from your book that I really liked, maybe you can illuminate this for us, was the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes.
You tell us about that?
You weren't alive, John, during the Cuban Missile Crisis. It occurred in the early 1960s when the president of the United States was then John Kennedy, and the leader of the Soviet Union was Khrushchev. And it was determined by U.S. intelligence that Russian ships had brought to Cuba ICBM missiles, nuclear head missiles that were installed and pointed at the United States 90 miles away. What Kennedy did was to demand that Khrushchev remove those missiles, and there were Russian ships steaming for Cuba at the time that were carrying more, and Kennedy said, "We're going to blockade those ships." And Khrushchev said, "That's an act of war. If you do that, you're going to set off a war, not any war, a nuclear war between the two greatest nuclear powers at the time that was estimated to kill a third of humanity." Right? And during that time, the two leaders were locked in this stare-off contest, and both of them were just adamant about their positions. And finally, because Kennedy was so adamant and strong-willed and resolute in this, Khrushchev blinked and he removed his missiles. Right? That was the story that we all heard in the history books and that I learned about when I was alive at the time. It turns out that there was a secret deal that was made between Kennedy and Khrushchev. It was a reciprocal concessions deal. That's Kennedy said, if you will remove your missiles from Cuba, we'll remove ours from Turkey that are pointed at you, right? But don't tell anybody about it, because if I was seen as compromising with, yielding in any way to our natural enemy at that time, our global enemy at that time, it would ruin my political aspirations for re-election, right? So Khrushchev was promised, yes, okay, I won't say anything. It wasn't until recently that this information was revealed at the Kennedy Library. After it was embargoed for all those years, it finally came up, and scholars have said, no, it wasn't this hard line that won the day. The hard line was the thing that risked the world. The thing that saved the world was reciprocal concession, and it got buried, right? And it's regrettable because the image that a lot of world leaders got from this: never compromise, never give in, just be strong, and if you are strong enough, you will win. It was exactly the wrong thing. That's not what happened at all. It was the rule for reciprocation that won the day.
I love that example, and the power of this particular effect is undeniable. Not everybody has great intent. How do we defend ourselves against this?
I think what we have to do is recognize that we can't just, in a blanket kind of way, reject the gifts and favors and services that may be very well intentioned for us, right? By people who would like to, increase our outcomes in a particular situation. What we have to do is recognize that when those people do that and then use that as a lever to get something much larger from us, we have to reframe what they gave us as no longer a gift to be reciprocated, but a trick, a device, an artifice designed to get our compliance with a much larger request where they will come out much far ahead in the bargain. We have to make that little change. And then here's where the rule for reciprocity comes in, because I studied a group that would get people to make appointments with them to check out their fire safety issues at home, right? And somebody would come in and give them a home fire extinguisher, and then would give them a bunch of reasons to buy a particular kind of very expensive heat activated fire alarm system that they were representing. So they weren't really there to give us the information about fire safety. They were there to sell this outrageously overpriced system. And what I say to people in this situation is, look, here's what, as soon as you see that the game was, don't treat the fire alarms, the fire extinguisher that you got, as a gift. Treat
Right.
it as a trick, right? Treat it as an attempt to exploit you. And if that's the case, show them the door and keep the fire extinguisher, because by the rule of reciprocation, exploiters should be exploited.
Yeah, it works both ways,
Yeah.
right?